Good evening and welcome again to our program, Women to Women. This is a program that features women who are definitely making a difference in Northern Nevada. And we're proud to have our sponsors, Carpa Nevada LLC, fine importer of Portuguese olive oils, balsamic vinegars, and international teas, as well as Vila Basque Deli and Cafe, home of Pete's famous chorizo. And now it's with great pleasure that I welcome our guest for this evening, Dr. Robin Titus. Robin, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you, Carol, for inviting me. My honor.
You know, it's exciting to have a woman physician with me because that was my hope as a young girl growing up. Didn't turn out that way, but I know that for you, medicine has been a deep-seated, not only passion, but total career for you, and yet you wear many hats. I'm aware of that. So would you share with us, Robin, are you a native Nevadan?
Well, I wasn't born here, but my grandmother was, my mom was, and we've been a presence in Smith Valley since the 1880s, where I live right now.
Since the 1880s. Where were you born originally?
Back east in Trenton. My mother grew up in Smith Valley, and during the war went to Hurlong, which is an ammunition dump here in California. Mm-hmm. She met my dad, who's from Pennsylvania, old Pennsylvania family, Quakers from Pennsylvania. They met and married, and after they divorced, we moved back to Smith Valley. So I really consider Smith Valley my home. Went to high school there, went to school there. It was really kind of created me, my passion for the West, my passion for Nevada. I was all about Smith Valley.
Nevada is a very special state.
It is.
And I'm coming from the East Coast as well, from New York. And I don't think I've ever fallen in love with a place as quickly as I have with Nevada.
Well, if you ever come through Smith Valley, it's this little gem, hidden spot on the planet. And I've traveled all over the world, and I never feel like I'm at home until I drop over Jack Wright Pass back in Smith Valley and just know, yes, it's a sense of belonging. Like I said, my grandmother was born there. She went to school at UNR, graduated in 1912. And then my mother was born there and graduated from high school there. And then I graduated from high school there. All of a class of 12 of us went on to school at UNR, actually in chemical engineering. In the 70s, so medicine was not my first career or my first passion, really. In the 70s, they were really looking for women in engineering. And I was this poor kid from Smith Valley, and my only way into school was to get scholarships. My parents loved me, and they helped me with a lot of love, but they couldn't help me with any money. And so it was my job to try to find my way. And so working hard and lots of scholarships and 3 jobs in college, I was a chemical engineer major. And then during my end of my sophomore year in chemical engineering, we went on a field trip down to Dow Chemical Corporation looking at jobs in the future. Mm-hmm. And I got down there and I thought, oh my God, I don't want to live down in the Bay Area. I want to live back in Smith Valley. And I thought, God, what can I do as a woman, as an independent woman, that will support me there? Not that I loved ranching, but I don't want to have to marry somebody to get into ranching. I want to be able to do something on my own. And I was fortunate enough to have a mentor by the name of Dr. Mary Fullstone. She was one of the early pioneer women in Nevada. She actually delivered my mother in 1925, and I came back and talked to her and thought, I could take over Dr. Mary's job. I never could replace Dr. Mary, but I could take over for her when she retired. And so I came back from that field trip, immediately changed my major into medicine, and went and then got into medical school. But unfortunately, by that time, when I left from chemical engineering, went into medicine, I lost all my scholarships. So I had to figure out a way to pay for my medical school without having to either join the Peace Corps or the Public Health Service or the military. So I came up with this idea to go and approach my county commissioners in Lyon County. So I put together a plan, went back, met with my county commissioners, and they agreed to pay my way for medical school so I would go back to Smith Valley. And they paid 3 years of my medical school. I paid the first year. And went back to Smith Valley. I was doing 3 years, and I've been there 28 years now. So it was a win-win for everybody. It's the type of assistance that really does pay off.
And I think it takes a very, I don't want to say competitive mind, but certainly a mind that works on the edge of things for the future to be able to come up with a plan like that.
Well, it was really, other counties, other areas have had, help pay for nurses, it'll help pay for doctors. If you want to bring a professional back, the best way to get a professional in rural areas is to grow somebody there. And so then they know what the rural area is all about and not afraid of going out to an isolated spot. So it was really a very successful thing for me. And still, 28 years later, I'm still passionate about being a doctor out there.
And did you take over Dr. Mary's position?
I did. Dr. Mary was 86 years old when I came back, and people would still come and knock on her door, and she'd take care of them over the years. But finally, she did retire, and that was the biggest challenge I've ever had in my life, was taking care of Dr. Mary. I've taken care of I'd say thousands of people now, but the biggest challenge was Dr. Mary, because she number one, she didn't understand why we would need malpractice insurance. She delivered over 5,000 babies, had never been sued. Not that she didn't have bad outcomes, but in Dr. Mary's day, if something bad happened, it was God's will, it was nature's, it was nobody's fault.
Yes.
And so she just didn't understand the liability situation and all of those issues. And actually, early in my career, Connie Chung was doing a TV program, something like Evening Harvest or some program that she was in, and it was during the liability malpractice crisis when I chose not to deliver babies anymore. And she came out, and Dr. Mary was still alive, and so she came out and interviewed my sister. She spent a week with me, because I still make house calls. So she made house calls.
You still make house calls?
I still make house calls.
Oh,
yeah.
I love it.
So she came and made house calls with me and spent a week out in Smith Valley, and it was quite fascinating. Dr. Mary was still alive, and came and interviewed Dr. Mary. It was pretty interesting time. It was in the mid '80s. So,
well. Robin, were you in medical school to become a general practitioner?
Yeah, my choice was always to be a family practice doc in Smith Valley.
Okay.
I mean, when I chose to be a doctor, it was all about living in Smith Valley. And primary care is really what I do. I literally am the only doctor for 30 miles around. I'm in the center of Smith Valley. I have a nurse practitioner that works part-time in the office. Other than that, it's me. And so I have a little helicopter pad. I had it in my home for 15 years. And then the hospital built me a little satellite clinic. And so now we have a helicopter pad, and I have all the emergency stuff. And, I'm on the highway between Smith Valley and Bridgeport. So sometimes I'll get hunters, get people driving by that'll come in. But most of the time it's patients that are waiting for me to come into the office, and it turns out they may or may not be having a heart attack or whatever, but they'll wait for me to show up, and then it's like, oh my goodness, you need to be out of here. But we deal with whatever happens.
Well, I have to ask you, because this is kind of breathtaking, did you find time for personal love in all of this?
Well, it's hard on relationships. Medicine is in general. Being a career person, it's hard on relationships. I have 2 children that are wonderful. My daughter has a little 1.5-year-old, and she's a teacher in Fernley. Has a master's degree, and Sharp loves teaching, and working on a speech pathology program. And then I have a son who is in Reno going to school and is becoming a welder. And I'm engaged to the sheriff of Lyon County and about to get married in the fall. So we have 2 very busy, high-profile people in the community that find time to enjoy things. And we mostly enjoy going out in Nevada and walking out in the desert and hiking and hunting and fishing and all the things that Nevada has to offer.
And I think that finding that balance is very important to you as a physician as well as a person. What kind of a daily schedule do you have?
Well, it's pretty crazy. I'm an avid sports person and I exercise. And so the first thing I do is get up and run 5 miles in the morning. I've done 10 marathons in the last 6 years. I've climbed Kilimanjaro 5 years ago. I've been to base camp of Mount Everest. So my first passion is staying physically fit.
Yes.
So I do that in the morning, because after that my day is no longer mine and I'm doing other things.
And the sheriff, can he keep up with you?
He doesn't keep up as far as running goes, but he gets up and he does his exercise. He thinks I'm crazy about my running, but I live right in if you've ever been through Smith Valley, which you have to come through, I live just right in downtown Wellington. It's a small little town that's built in, like I said, in the late 1800s. I live in a very old house that was built in 1916.
Historic.
And right next to the old Wellington Mercantile, and there's a road called Hoy Canyon Road there. Well, I have a piece of property up that river property. It's 2.5 miles up the river, so I take my 2 dogs and I run up that river every morning. This morning, coming back, I have a German Shorthair, and the German Shorthair went on point because there's a trucker up there, and I thought, oh, it scared up some trucker. And I looked, and all of a sudden, this big bald eagle flies up, and it was just, it makes your day. It just wow, those kind of things are priceless. I can't begin to tell you how wonderful that is to
And
experience
it
that.
doesn't happen in other states,
No,
but it can happen here in Nevada.
The other day, driving home from the hospital in Yerington, which is where I work at the ER, driving home, I saw a gold eagle on one side of the valley and a bald eagle on the other side of the valley. You know, how wonderful is that? You know,
It's
just a
very
day.
special,
So
very
it's
special.
My average day is I get up, I go for my run.
Right.
And then I hopefully make it to the office in time, which doesn't happen too frequently, but I try. So I get to the office, I see patients all day on Monday. And then on Tuesday, I see patients, and then I drive to Yerington where I work in the emergency room overnight, and then get back up on Wednesday morning and go back to I call it my day job. I go back to Smith Valley to the office, and then I work again on Thursday in the office, and then a half day I do paperwork, make phone calls. And I'm the county health officer for Lyon County and have been for many years, about 28 years, so I do that type of work. I'm also the medical director for the Little Topaz Clinic, which is another 15 miles away, so on Thursday afternoon I'll go out and review charts there. I'm also the chair-elect for our Nevada Family Physicians, Academy of Family Physicians for the state of Nevada. I'm also the president of our Historical Society in Smith Valley. So, like I said, in between that, that's my
I have to ask you, who took care of these little guys as they're growing up?
Well, thank goodness for family. Well, first off, in Smith Valley, everybody's family. You can trust them. You know where your children are. I knew what my kids were doing before they knew what they were doing. They could never get into trouble because somebody said, "Hey, Doc, did you know this?" You know, and so. But my parents live in Smith Valley, and she was wonderful and was able to watch both of my children. They're 9 years apart. My mom was there for them the whole time. I was the professional. My mom was the room mother. My mother would go in and be there on whatever day of the week. She'd make the brownies. She'd make sure that the kids were taken care of at school. She'd pick them up from school and bring them home.
Yes.
And I'd do many a call because on Tuesday nights I spend the night at the hospital, and some Sundays, and I just take my kids with me. You know, I made rounds. I worked up until the day I had both my children. And my son, since I was in private practice, you couldn't really take the time off. So I actually had a deer tag. This sounds, maybe your women are going to be rolling their eyes, but I had a deer tag for Smith Valley. And so I shot my buck on Sunday and had my son on Monday. Actually, his name is Buck also. And I went back to work making rounds on patients on Thursday. So that's all true.
You know, you have to have been in really great shape to be able to bounce back like that from giving birth on Monday to working again on Thursday.
Yeah, it was, fortunately I had easy pregnancies. And making rounds, I'll tell you one of the most precious things about that was I made hospital rounds on Thursday, and I had to go see another patient, and here's my little guy, he's just 48 hours old, and there was a lady I had in the nursing home, and I'd had her there for a number of years, and I said, "Here, hold Bucky for a second while I go see so-and-so," and I came back and she was just crying. And I said, "What's wrong? What happened?" She said, it's the first time she'd ever held a baby. Oh. She and her brother had never married. She ended up in the nursing home in her late 80s. She didn't have any nieces or nephews. She was a professional. She was never around babies. And my son was the first baby that she had ever held. And she just was in awe at this. And so it was a pretty special moment.
You know, the touch of infant skin.
Yeah.
And the aroma of a newborn.
Like a little puppy, huh?
They are just, they're things that you don't forget in your memory. Mm-hmm. And they don't happen very often in life. How did Bucky get his name?
Well, his dad, his grandfather was a saddle-bronc champion of the world in the 1950s. He beat out Casey Tibb at one point. And so his father, my ex-husband, was always wanted to be a kind of a cowboy. And when kids would call him Bucky, his mother would get mad and say, "No, his name's John." And so he determined that if he ever had a son, he was going to name him Buck, and that's his real name, so that's his name is Buck.
Well, we're going to return to the second part of our program, and this is going at a rapid pace, okay? I just love interviewing you, and I love the fact that you're here and sharing so much. So we'll be back shortly. Don't run away.
Are you looking for a healthier lifestyle? A more nutritious diet? Do you care about quality? If your answer is yes, or if you are just curious, come into Villa Basque Deli and Cafe right here in Carson City, Nevada. Discover fine Portuguese extra virgin olive oils, vintage balsamic vinegars, and a wide assortment of international health teas provided by distributor Carpa Nevada LLC. In addition to these terrific items, Villa Basque is also the home of Pete's famous Basque chorizo, handmade on the premises from Pete's secret family recipe. Satisfy your culinary curiosities. Don't delay.
Welcome back to our second half of Women to Women. And my guest this evening is Dr. Robin Titus from Smith Valley. And she is a whirlwind of activity. If you were with us the first half, you certainly didn't go very far. You want the second half coming up. So I thank you again, Robin, for being with us this evening.
Well, again, it's my honor. Thank you.
Robin, you are a remarkable person, and I can tell even before I met you when I was talking with you on the phone that people, your patients, are near and dear to your heart and that they come first. You are a career woman, but you're also a woman of many other interests, as you've indicated, with the various chairs that you hold. And one of my questions to you is, you are interested in politics.
Yes, I've always been interested in politics and had thought about running for our state assembly from my district for many, many years. But it was when the national interest was in a national health care policy. The Affordable Health Care Act was coming up, and I was seeing all these ads, and I've seen all these politicians on both sides, Republican and Democrat, that were discussing the issues of health care, affordable health care, and access to health care. And nobody really knew what they were talking about on either side. And it was just seemed to me like there needed to be more people like me that have spent hours on the phone trying to get something authorized, have seen patients who want to get well, not be able to have access to the care or their medicines, denied a medication by somebody on the phone who has not a clue on who I am or who my patient is, but they're looking down this checklist and say, no, they can't have that medicine. And it's my nurse, who's been my same nurse for 28 years, who I beg not to retire, is, she's so frustrated with healthcare because of the paperwork. I mean, for every half an hour of patient time, I probably spend 2.5 hours of paperwork time, documentation, and it's just incredible. And so one day, as I was watching yet another misleading information on the news about this Affordable Health Care Act, I thought, oh my gosh, if people like me don't get involved, if somebody other than career politicians who have no skin in the game get involved, who's going to help guide us at this critical time? And as it turns out, Harry Reid was up for re-election at the time, and he was one of the ones pushing this, and I decided I was going to be one of the ones running against him.
Push back.
Exactly. And so I was one of the plethora of people running against Harry Reid and did not file for the primary when it became very evident that I wanted to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. I traveled all over the state, and in the meantime, still working full time, still wearing my other hats. I just made it happen and realized that there was already plenty of people in that running against Harry Reid, that my chances were very slim, and so that I would be very supportive of whoever got the nomination of the Republican Party. So when I withdrew from running, I actually opened my house in Smith Valley to every single one of the senatorial candidates that were running against him, including Sue Loudon and Danny Tarkanian and Sharon Angle, and all of them came to my house at different times in Smith Valley, and so I could introduce the people in Smith Valley to these candidates to let them decide who they would, and meet them personally, and all the candidates came, which was really pretty wonderful on their part. Yes. And I'm doing the same thing. You may not know this new congressional district, CD4. Nevada has a new congressional seat.
Yes.
And what they did when they redistricted and redid the line after the 2010 census, Smith Valley has always been in Congressional District 2, which you may or may not know about. That seat's currently held by Mark Amodei, previously held by Senator Heller. So they peeled Smith Valley off, though, because of population distribution, and for whatever reason they decided behind these doors. And now Smith Valley and southern Mason Valley, which is Yerington, is now peeled off into CD4, the new Congressional District 4. But it's also tied in other rural areas and northern Clark County. Okay. So that's a huge congressional district. So I have done the same thing to the current people running in that district to come to my home so people in Smith Valley can meet them and ask them issues.
All right. Dr. Titus, what is it that we as a people here in Nevada and around this country, What do we need to understand about healthcare, affordable healthcare, that we're not being told?
Well, for me, the whole issue was what got passed wasn't really better access to care. It just put more people on basically a Medicaid type program. And it didn't really say, okay, you're going to have better access to doctors. It needs to make affordable healthcare, or this whole healthcare act, in my mind, needs to make people responsible for their healthcare decisions. One of my issues was I stay fit, I make good healthcare choices, I don't smoke, all those things. I get my annual checkups, all the things that you need to do. I eat properly, maybe don't get enough sleep, but for the most part, I try to be healthy. And I'm going to be put in the same risk pool as all those folks who do not make good choices.
Right.
Not to say that they should be penalized, because I'm more on a reward system. I mean, I think that people who make good choices should be rewarded for those good choices. And I never saw any of that. And also patients who have, are self-insured. I have patients who, in Smith Valley, you don't live in Smith Valley if you need public housing or public transportation, because there's really no public rentals. You know, the farmers have houses for their employees, and everybody else has homes. There's no apartments there. And so
It's a residential
residential. There's no bus that goes through there. There's nothing. So if you live there, you generally have a retirement system, or you have a job, either in the valley, or most people commute. And so those folks have choices that they've made about staying healthy, and a lot of them say, well, I'm going to come in and pay you cash. Well, the new Healthcare Act doesn't allow that.
Doesn't allow that. That's
For
right.
people to make those choices about, I'm going to pay you cash and negotiate. So I think we should be able to negotiate it, you know, because really when you have an absolute cost, the only people who are making money are insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, and the people like are charging you for x-rays. You know, I mean, there's no competition there. You don't get to call up and say, hey, you know, what do you charge for that chest x-ray? What do you charge for that chest x-ray on the other building? So that they can say, okay, I'll give you a 10% discount if you pay cash. And it took all that incentive out of it. And so I really believe in more of the self-insured. You know, if you, here's this pile of money for your insurance.
Yes.
And if you get some of that back if you don't use it. Now, that's not to say that people have catastrophic illnesses that they absolutely, no matter what happens. I mean, I could come down with some, you know, life-threatening cancer in the next year that I have no control over. Those are going to be huge bills.
Yes.
And those have to be taken care of. We as a society have to do that to our folks, as far as I'm concerned. But you have that pool of money that you do that with. And so that's my issue. And then, of course, as a physician, one of my concerns is liability. I mean, I think that didn't really address the fact how much of the costs are done because we're practicing medicine, not necessarily good medicine, you practice legal medicine. Knock on wood, that's not an issue for me in Smith Valley. I feel like if you practice good medicine, you've covered yourself.
Right.
But, you know, good doctors get sued all the time, and mistakes happen. And people have bad outcomes. It doesn't really mean that's anybody's fault. As I talked earlier in the program about Dr. Mary, you know, there are always going to be bad outcomes. Wonderful people die, you know, and still, it's not a fault. But in this day and age, somebody gets sued.
Does it seem to you, as it does to me, I am 68 years old, and I see separation taking place amongst the generations in our thinking, in our behaviors, and in our future hopes for the country. Instead of binding ourselves together as a unit, as a nation, we seem to be in a sense of fracture.
I see that too, and very frustrating for me. We, as you know, we have a presidential caucus coming up February 4th. The Republicans do, the Democrats have already had those. When we decided we were going to have, when I heard that we were having presidential caucus, I wanted to make sure that I educated myself about it as the chair of our Lane County Republicans. And so when I came up with this idea is that if I don't quite understand what that's all about, how do our high school students coming out and voting do? So when I put together a program and I contacted my Democrat counterpart, and at first she said, well, why? It's a caucus. What do we need to go into the schools for? And I said, no, I said, it's really critical that they see that, number one, Democrats and Republicans can be in the same room together and be cordial and communicate. And I said, let's go out to the high school students. So I've been to 3 separate high schools in Lyon County and giving this program and it just spent last Friday in Yerington. talking to the government classes and the seniors about how important it is that they participate in government, that they participate in the caucus, as it were, the presidential caucus or the precinct meetings are the very ground level and network, grassroots network to becoming involved as a citizen, as in democracy. And so it has been wonderful experience. As a matter of fact, Claudia Conlon, who was the chair of the Democrats, was just afterwards said, wow, it's been a great experience for both of us to go in and meet with these high school kids. Very receptive.
Let me ask you, what did the 18-year-olds, the 17-year-olds, what types of questions, where was their interest? Did you bring them back into the future of our nation, do you think, as voters?
Well, that's what my interest was. I said, this is the chance that they can get involved. I said, we're out here making decisions. The decisions I make today, the decisions that are being made for them in Washington aren't going to affect me. It's going to affect them at 18 for the years of debt that we're putting on them, or the choices about college education, as President Obama's gone around about payment for college, all those issues. It's affecting these kids, these 18-year-old voters. It's really the huge impact, which direction our nation's going. And I don't care what political party you're in, whatever decisions happen, what they vote on today doesn't affect them. It affects that coming in 2014. It comes in 2016, 2020. Those are the times they're going to be affected by it. And so I think it's key that they're involved. And for the most part, some of them were typical seniors. Oh gosh, I don't want to be involved. I just want to graduate. And think about it. It was Winterfest, but they were going to think about the program that night, those kind of things. But for the most part, they were all polite, listened, wanted to know what time it started. On all the government teachers were giving them extra credit for coming to the caucus. Wonderful. And so that's always good incentive. And just to get them involved in the conversation.
Yes. And I know that one of the young producers of our program is very much interested in politics, and that was exciting to me. And I think what we need to do, this is why it's so important on the program Women to Women, that those women who have some decades of experience, decades of understanding, decades of watching the scenes in our country take place, they have a perspective that has marinated over a period of time. And it's that marination process that we can share with and invite to the younger generation to become a part of what we all want to have is a healthier, safer, and more united future for all of us as American citizens. So I'm wondering, Robin, Dr. Titus, what hopes do you have, not only in medicine, but also as a leader in the various leadership groups that appear in Northern Nevada? What hopes do you see for the future of the United States or for the future of Nevada?
Well, I see a lot. I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of young people. I was on the admissions committee at the medical school at one point, and it was always amazing to me, these quality young people who still want to get into medicine. And one of my close family members by marriage just got into medical school, and it was fun to meet with her and hear her passions and know that these kids are really out there. There's really wonderful hope for these kids. I mean, they want to have a successful nation. They may not approach it the same way we did, but I think every generation's youth really wants to do the next step up from the previous generation. Our poor youth have been marred down with Iraq, and they only know 9/11. I think that's what their whole era has been all about, and they need to have some more positive references. And right now, I think our political situation is terrible. The infighting between the groups, it's been just terrible. So there's still hope out there. The kids are great, and it's really been fun to work with them.
And the challenge that we leave them with, that we are going to have to turn over to them, they have seen so much conflict, as you bring up, in their short lifetimes. And if we continue that conflict between groups, political groups, it doesn't say a whole lot about turning the nation around. Right. So we have to make sure, and I think you're doing more than your fair share, Robin, of bringing to the attention of not only the generations to come, but you're an encouragement there to the 60s and the 70s and the 80s that you continue to put in, you continue to work with, and you continue to pray for results that are beneficial to all of us. Thank you so much for your contributions.
Oh, you're more than welcome. It's actually it's a privilege. I enjoy it. I feel honored. I drive to work and I think, oh my God, thank God that it's a privilege for me to have the job that I have.
And I want to thank our sponsors for tonight's program, Carpa Nevada LLC and Villa Basque Deli and Cafe, home of Pete's famous chorizo. So we thank you, Doctor. We thank our viewing audience, and we look forward to seeing you next week with a brand new guest. In the meantime, stay safe. Have a good evening. Good night.